Hi everyone, let's do the chanting straight away. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Tudayambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tudayambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tudayambi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tadayambi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tadayambi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tadayambi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to exist and extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddhist way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata gati gati parasam gati bodhi soha. Tayata gati gati parasam gati bodhi soha. Tayata gati gati parasam gati bodhi soha. Excuse my verbal stumble, if that's an expression, maybe a new one. I went to almost sneeze just as I was about to say extinguish, and it came out as something like so so that's not a language. Anyway, yeah, quite hot. Excuse me, having my sleeves rolled up a little. I think it says 31 degrees in my room. But the news says on the computer, temps to drop. Well, that's good. So yeah, it feels quite a bit warmer than that, but that's okay. Just dab my forehead a little bit. And yeah, I hope you're all well. You know, it's pretty extreme, isn't it? Like we have this Zoom class, and most people participating live are in Australia, I'd say, or maybe Southeast Asian countries. And of course, Hanukkah as well in England. It's quite extreme because it's freezing over there. I spoke to my uncle the other day, or Mum and I did, on Skype. And I think he said something like it was the daytime and it was 5 degrees or something. So quite a bit different to 31. 31 supposedly feels a little bit more like 35 or up. So yeah, of course, you know, we participate all around the world, don't we? It's a little bit to do with the subject that we're starting today, okay? which really is about, it's the article that says growth of Buddhism in Australia, but really we're talking about the spread of Buddhism, isn't it, to different places. And as you'll notice when I teach you from this or give commentary on this, but also just read to you the bare article today, for instance, you'll notice that it relates to a lot of teachings and doesn't just relate to Australia as such. And of course, we've all benefited from that. In a sense, the people moving around the world, great opportunity to learn from each other. As well, people like myself and especially the Westerners there, or people born in this type of country, then we're very fortunate that the Buddhism has traveled. Unfortunately, some of the reasons why it's traveled is because the Buddhists have been persecuted in certain places, such as Tibet and so on. But we're very lucky that the Dalai Lama, for instance, and other great teachers have traveled to the Western countries. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have. But of course, the globalization, the more travel around the world, it's positive and negative out of everything, isn't it? We have the positive where we get to learn about different cultures. Therefore, we can give up our own attachments, maybe learn better ways from some people. I think all cultures have good ways and bad ways and in different ways, different expressions of them. But also the negativities as well. Maybe some more confusion around if we don't utilize our intellect correctly, and also pollution. Actually, that's one thing I mentioned when I gave a talk on reducing pollutions and things some time ago. It was consuming less, but also the fact that we travel more. There's more pollution going in the air every single day, and then of course the people around the world. Or sorry, big businesses around the world that relate to this type of business chop trees down, don't they? To build this, that, the other, and whatever, destroy forests. So there's a lot of things that are negative in relation to the travel too. Okay, so that's the intro for the day. It relates to the subject we're starting today. I wasn't going to speak like that. I just spoke off the cuff. All right, so let's do some meditation now. We can get into a nice comfortable position, whatever suits us. We can gently close our eyes, unless it is your habit to keep the eyes open, but be careful not to be distracted by physical or visual things, I should say. Bring your mind inside your body now. Starting from the tips of the toes, work your way up your body, releasing the tension as you go past different parts of the body you're concentrating on. All the way up your body to shoulders and down to the tips of your fingers and to the top of your head. So from your feet up to your knees, up to your hips, the upper torso to the shoulders, down to the tips of your fingers and to the top of your head. And now release whatever tension you still may have left over, just scanning the body briefly again. And now bring your focus initially to the tip of your nose. And focus on the feeling of the breath as you breathe in your nose all the way into your lungs. So past your throat, your bronchial area, all the way into your lungs. As the lungs fill with the air, they expand. And as a result of that, the abdomen rises a bit, then falls as the air leaves the lungs, they compress, and exits the body through the nose again. So breathing in and breathing out. That's all you have to do physically, apart from being here physically. Mentally, all you have to do is focus on this feeling of the breath and then replace your mind back onto the breath if you become distracted or dull. You can also add the extra technique of counting the breath from 1 to 10. 1 in breath and 1 out breath is 1, and so on. And if you get distracted on the way to 10, go back to 1 at that time. So breathing in and breathing out. If thoughts arise, don't cling to them, don't grasp at them, don't try to force them away or deny them, but simply let them go naturally by replacing your mind back onto your breath. And likewise with any other mental activity. And also, if your mind becomes dull or sleepy, then wake it up a little bit by refocusing on your breath more brightly. So let's practice like this in silence for a little bit. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves and fill ourselves with universal loving kindness. Utilizing obviously the feeling, but also the visualization technique of filling our whole being with the white light. Really feel nice about this, okay? You are your own best friend. We can't be kind to ourselves. How can we be kind to others? Actually, if we can't be kind to ourselves and kind to others, how is it possible for us to develop immeasurable loving kindness and compassion? We also need to develop the mind of equanimity. With the mind of equanimity, we can have boundless love and compassion. And by practicing something like this loving kindness meditation, and working to be kind off the cushion as well, and compassionate as well, this helps us to chip away, you could say, at our mental afflictions and realize this equanimous mind eventually. And of course, eventually, the supreme wisdom, which is not separate from loving kindness and compassion. So now you have so much loving kindness that it overflows and radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, family and friends, and fills them with the universal loving kindness too. Now further to strangers as well. And even those that you may regard as enemies. All of these different types of people from your own perspective. May they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. Now they're all filled with this universal loving kindness, this white light. Now let's radiate beyond just human beings and radiate outwards distance-wise, around your immediate area initially, to all living beings now. All sentient beings, whether weak or strong, great or small, short or tall, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born, may they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. All of the living beings that are born from wombs and eggs and moisture and through transformation, living on the land or in the waters, flying through the air. And now let's radiate throughout our whole state or county to all of the innumerable living beings, whether you know about them or not. And other states and counties throughout your whole country. And all of the countries throughout the world, initially those you have an affinity towards and know about, those you're indifferent towards, as well as those that for whatever reason you may have some negative feelings towards. And have your loving kindness pervade throughout all of the oceans, which host most of the life on this planet, and I would imagine other planets too, and all the way down to the core of the earth and to the outermost atmosphere. Now radiate your loving kindness throughout the whole solar system. And all of the solar systems throughout the galaxy. And all of the galaxies throughout the universe. Have your loving kindness pervade throughout infinite space. Whilst also being present here and now to recite the dedication prayer with loving kindness and equanimity. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, so like I said, we work off this article. Just to remind you that this article initially is in its initial form, of course it's been edited and added to slightly since then, was written for the World Alliance of Buddhists conference at the Echo Monastery in which is also the Buddhist Dharma University, founded by great master Wei Hai, who I regard as one of my teachers, even though we didn't spend that much time together. We have very close feelings together, and like teacher and student, And so, yeah, I went there in 2017 as part of this conference and was asked to speak about the growth of Buddhism in Australia. So I wrote this short article, okay, or shorter than this one slightly. Anyway, when I was asked to partake face to face, actually, in person in Japan, again, same as last year, for, was it the World Buddhist Mission, the awards of the Pillars of Buddhism 2025 conference in Hiroshima and Okayama in Japan, 7th to the 9th of April, which is also about Buddhism in India, America, Japan, and Australia in 2025. And so I actually recorded this. Now I see it written here on the 28th of October. So that's when I was asked whether I could go. So I can't go in person. I said that I present a video and this teaching. So I remember this teaching. Lucky I kept it really handy. And like I said, I rewrote it slightly and sort of added to a little bit. And then recorded the video and gave a little bit of extra commentary with that. And so, I had this sort of hanging about since then, sort of 2 pages, and I thought we should talk about it. It's got a lot of teachings throughout it. Once again, I remind you, we're not really just talking about Australia, it's talking about other places as well. And I also, just yesterday, I think, I accessed another teaching by Master Atisha. And so I've, emailed it to myself. I had it in my files already and I forgot. So the longer one, the heart advice from Master Atisha, is what we'll go on to after we spend a few weeks on this. And I'll add this other teaching too. I think it's maybe, maybe 10 or 12 short verses. Okay, so we've got plenty of teaching to do. After that, if I don't think of anything else, which most likely I will, but if I don't think of anything else, we'll actually have commentary on my long article, which is meditation and its benefits, getting to know your mind, okay? Because there's lots of different aspects of the Dharma within that article as well. Okay, so we've got plenty of stuff to work off, and in betweens, maybe little things coming from your questions and questions from others that I can expand upon. I think we never are short of teachings in the Dharma, even though, really the explanations that we can give, the examples that we can give as so-called Dharma teachers, really is helping to bring it into the modern times. But actually the Dharma is already there. The word spoken by the Buddha is already there. And the true Dharma, beyond Dharma, is actually beyond words and expressions, but we need the words, need the expressions, and then we need the language spoken and examples given that relate to this time so that you guys can understand it. Like that, okay? So that'll do for the minute. It's really very stuffy. 27 degrees. It says that the temperature's going down. I don't believe so. I think they're making that up. I think one of the things I think is really funny is that when they say, oh, the true temperature is 25, but it feels like 35. Or the true temperature is 20, feels like 15. I don't know where they get that from. That's who's making up their mind that's saying it feels like. I used to absolutely love really hot weather. And as I've got older, it's a pain in the butt. But you just deal with it, don't you? Okay, so this article, the growth of Buddhism in Australia. I'll read it to you just straight off the cuff, okay? Straight off now. And if there's any bits I want to talk about today, then I will. So it's really just introducing it to you and giving a bit of an overview, okay? And then we dissect it as we do the other teachings. The growth of Buddhism in Australia. Buddhism has taken firm roots in Australia during the last few decades, due in part to people migrating to Australia from various Buddhist cultures and the second generation, who either moved to Australia as children or were born there. Once again, I'm putting there, even though I'm here right now, because I spoke about this article overseas. It is also due in part to the genuine interest in these precious teachings and way of life shown by Australians of all backgrounds, some of whom have deep virtuous roots from practicing the Dharma in previous lives, and others who are totally new to the Dharma, having a strong attraction to the peace, harmony, and understanding that results from the Buddhist practices of morality, meditation, and wisdom. Therefore, it is essential that the Dharma be taught in the English language, using terminology and expression that can be clearly understood. Although there may well have been some interaction between Buddhists and Australia's indigenous peoples throughout history, due to Australia's proximity to Asia, the first recorded example of Buddhism there dates back to the 1850s, gold rush, when many Chinese people migrated to Australia, many of whom would have been Buddhist. The first known Buddhist temple was established in South Melbourne in 1856. The first instance of a Buddhist monk arriving in Australia was in 1910, when an English-born monk arrived from Myanmar, or known to English speakers in those days as Burma. And also over the years, although over the years various monks visited Australia, it wasn't until the 1970s that monks began to permanently reside there. People have been migrating to and visiting many countries around the world for a very long time, and even so, or even more so these days, with easier access to international travel and with globalization. As practicing Buddhists, we must be moral, compassionate, and wise, and of benefit to all sentient beings, and not be the cause of conflict and trouble. Therefore, when we migrate to different regions around the world, including Australia, Buddhism and Buddhists have enriched their adopted culture with peace, harmony, and understanding. In a multicultural society such as Australia, if we are wise, we can learn from each other, widen our view of the world and the ways of the world. As Buddhists, we must be kind and friendly and engage in peaceful and harmonious interaction with others based on understanding. And therefore, we are generally a positive influence on those around us, silently encouraging others of varying persuasions to do likewise. From my observation and experience teaching the Dharma in both Australia and the USA, Buddhists and Buddhist communities have done exactly that, been a positive influence and brought benefit to the region where they live and the people that live there. Buddhists generally abide by the law of the land and assimilate peacefully within their chosen homeland. In Australia, Buddhism is held in a high regard as a way of peace, a blameless religion with a history that has caused peace, harmony, and understanding wherever it has traveled, including in Australia, where the number of temples and Dharma centers, as well as the number of practitioners from all backgrounds, is constantly and consistently increasing. Of course, as with everywhere, there are still many difficulties and obstacles with having access to and practicing Dharma in a place like Australia that is not considered a Buddhist country. For example, it is sometimes difficult and a long process obtaining such things as building and operational permits for Buddhist establishments such as temples, meditation centers, and schools, along with various other difficulties. But these difficulties and obstacles can be overcome with consistent practice, pure intentions, good skills, and enthusiastic effort. May I also add that in Australia we have reasonably easy access to all of the Buddhist traditions, and cultures, which I feel is a great opportunity for us all to develop genuine understanding into the meaning and practice of the Buddha Dharma, and to develop and maintain unity and support within the Buddhist community as a whole. Remember, we are one, so let's help and support each other as much as possible, so that we are all able to study, practice, and share the pure Dharma to the best of our ability in our own countries and throughout the world, the whole world. May the immeasurably precious Buddha Dharma flourish throughout the whole world and throughout infinite space. So that's the article. There was actually, now that I recall, there was actually a part in the initial article that I took out of this article, this version, and that was that from my understanding, the initial monks, the monastics that came to Australia to live here were the Vietnamese monks. And in fact, I think if I remember correctly and have it correctly, Master Fuquay, who established Fuquay Temple in Sydney, and as part of that, and also then Kuan Min Temple in Melbourne is related to Fuquay Temple in Fairfield in Sydney, and Kuan Min Temple is in Braybrook in Melbourne. Okay, so and some offshoot temples as well, I imagine, smaller places, and influenced a lot of different masters to come here, maybe, and establish other Dharma centers and temples, so forth. So I'm pretty sure that I'm correct there. But also there were some Tibetan monks that came, such as Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, a student of Lama Yeshe. Of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche established what I think is something like for the preservation of the Mahayana tradition. And their main temple in Melbourne is in Bendigo. It's the Great Stupa there, the Stupa of Great Compassion. And the Tibetan, I can't remember now, but some other centers around Australia as well. So I can't remember exactly when they or he came to Australia. That is the Lama Yeshe, who's passed away a long time ago now, but maybe through the 70s, 80s, but they didn't live here. Okay, so that was the point that I was making about the first monks that appears that started to live here. Whether that was with visas that were sponsored by others or whether they actually got citizenship quite early on, I don't know all these details. But also I mentioned that the which I took out of this article was the Tibetan Buddhism, because of the translations happening a lot earlier, or good translations, I should add, happening a lot earlier than the translations from other traditions, whether they didn't happen at all or whether they weren't great translations, awkward language. It seems that the Tibetans got the good translations happening a lot earlier, and therefore a lot of Westerners interested in Buddhism, English speakers say, and in other languages and throughout Europe as well, then they were attracted to Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. Now, it may have been style of Buddhism too. It's quite active, visualizations, mantra, and so on. Active in the sense of passive activeness or active passiveness. You could keep in, focusing the mind, utilizing these actions such as mental actions, visualization, verbal actions such as chanting the mantras, and doing the physical actions such as the mudras and so on, to train the mind, So maybe this was also helpful in attracting the Westerners to Tibetan Buddhism. So I was asked a lot throughout the 90s and early 2000s, why do you think, so many people, Westerners, English speakers, are practicing Tibetan Buddhism and not Chinese Buddhism, for instance? That came from the Silai Temple, asked that in America. And I said, maybe it's the translations. So I think the translations from Silai Temple and Master Sinyun, for instance, his teachings being translated into English were excellent. But I think maybe earlier on they weren't so. And that's the same with the other traditions as well. Okay, so I think that's all I'll say about that because I don't remember exactly the few paragraphs that I wrote and the finer details of them. But I just thought I'd share that with you. Okay. Now we started the class slightly late today because Leanne was arriving slightly late from where she was before the class. So I'm pretty sure it'll go on for a little bit longer. But if it doesn't, it's 5:40 now, which is the time we're supposed to finish. Oh, actually, I've got the clock. I forgot. So 3 minutes to go. That's good. And so hopefully you'll enjoy this information. Um, some of the information, like I said, it's really just giving you some details from the past. Obviously, I don't know that past experientially, because I wasn't there. I only know it inferentially from reading about it, sort of comparing things, comparing different books and whatever that I got the information from. Okay, so I will just reiterate that for you. The first instance, or I should say here, although there may well have been some interaction between Buddhists and Australia's indigenous peoples throughout history, which I'll expand upon next week a little bit. Due to Australia's proximity to Asia, being part of Asia, really, you know, the first recorded example of Buddhism there dates back to the 1850s gold rush. Obviously, now I imagine this would be the same around the world, so the gold rushes, in America, for instance, or the US, I should say, when many Chinese people, and probably from other Buddhist cultures as well, migrated to Australia, many of whom would have been Buddhist. The first known Buddhist temple was established in South Melbourne in 1856, though I imagine there would have been groups practicing secretly, you could say, because of prejudice and things like that, around these gold rush areas. I imagine they probably got together in a tent and did some chanting, Namo Mitofo, Namo Mitofo, or Namo Amitabha Buddha, like this, and maybe some other prayers, maybe it's a meditation. I imagine that would have been the case, but they needed to do it probably in secret so that there was no prejudice and no persecution and things like that. So 1 minute to go. The first instance of a Buddhist monk arriving in Australia was in 1910, when an English-born monk arrived from Myanmar. And also, although over the years various monks visited Australia, it wasn't until the 1970s that monks began to permanently reside there. Now, of course, we're talking about monks, but also nuns as well. We never should, even though it happens, try not to discriminate and think this one's better than that one, this one's higher than that one. Depends on the individual Buddhist practitioner and then their teachings as well, sharing the Dharma. Monks and nuns, ordained Sangha, but also not ordained Sangha teachers as well. It all depends on the individual's mind and ability to teach, share the Dharma with others. I rejoice in your goodness as always. Study the Dharma well, practice the Dharma well, share the Dharma well. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangham.